Hi, my name's Brian Lawrence and welcome to the show Motorsport Legends. What a fantastic program we've got lined up for you today, and our special guest, may I please welcome and introduce to you Paul Adams. Paul, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Brian, appreciate that.
But I want to go right back to square one and I want to talk to you about your first rally car, a Morris 1100.
I knew nothing about motorsport. My family had never had any involvement in it, and my cousin, who was highly esteemed by my father, invited me to a hill climb, and it was actually the very first ever hill climb out at Cossey's Farm, run by the Northern Sports Car Club. So I said to him, he told me I needed a car and I needed a crash helmet. So I went and said to my father, can I borrow the salesman's car that's in the garage? John wants to take me to a hill climb. He said, well, if John's going, it's got to be okay, so yes, you can take it. So away we went out to this hill climb. I knew nothing about them, but I did know that the Morris 1100 made a funny noise at 42 miles an hour in second gear, which I later found out was valve bounce. But if I managed to drive it up to 45 kilometres an hour in second gear, I beat the other one. So that was how it happened. But and I was really enjoying it until all of a sudden it blew a rocker off and the motor sounded terrible, and I thought I'm in trouble with Dad. But luckily, on the way home, I called into the service station at the bottom of the Parnell Rise, and there's a motor mechanic there by the name of Peter Orr, and he's, it's only the rocker, we'll just tighten it up. I came out of retirement, and that was the start of my racing career.
A Mk1 Cortina came along. That was a pretty important car for you.
It was, and it was also another motorsport legend, Johnny Windelburn, who had a garage just down the road from Rebuild Homes, where I served my apprenticeship, and he ran North Shore Automatics. And in motorsport, there's thousands of people that make you look good. And John was the first one that came in for me, and he helped me out with this Cortina. But he said, look, the problem is, Paul, it's got skinny tyres and it's sitting up high. If you're going to do any good in this car, you've got to lower it down and put fat wheels on it. And the immediate thing that came to mind was, Dad won't like that. So I had to come up with a plan on how I could convince him that we needed to lower this car and put wider wheels on it. So I discovered a particular corner that I was well within the speed limits, of course, but I mastered the art and the wit of actually coming into that turn, being able to spin the car 360 degrees and carry on. So I waited for the opportune time with my conservative father in the passenger seat, bringing him back from the city, and I came into the corner in the wet and I just did my little flick on the accelerator. We went 360 degrees and carried on. And my dad says, whoa, what's going on here? And I said, Dad, I said, this car, I said, unfortunately in the rain, it tends to do that. It gives me one heck of a fright. He said, well, what can we do, son? What can we do? I said, well, I've heard you've got to lower them down and put fatter feet, and then they're good. Well, you've got to do that, boy. You've got to do that. So she was good from then on.
Moving on, that Cortina, a pretty special car. You entered the Shell Silver Fern rally in it.
We did.
Yeah,
and
amazing.
We really didn't know what the rally was. We knew we had to take crash helmets again, but the guy that was boarding with us was a guy called Ken Mikkola, lives up north. We put our suitcases in the back and away we went. And it was the best thing since sliced bread. We couldn't believe that we could go on these special stages, closed road, go as fast as we could. And I remember we blew a head gasket, we changed it on the side of the road, the exhaust fell off in another bit, we'd go into a cockie's driveway and he'd weld it up for us. It was it. But that was the start of rallying.
You have a lot of special steps in your career. The Southern Cross was probably a major one, maybe 2 steps at a time.
Yeah, well, the Southern Cross came a few years later. We'd done some rallies in New Zealand, and there was Mike Marshall, I think, Rod Millen, there was myself. A few of us decided we wanted to go over and explore further, and we went across and did the Southern Cross rally. I remember we flew the cars across in the plane, and the biggest fright we got was sitting on the runway, and they said, we've got a delay, we can't close the cargo hold. And they came down to me and they said, it's actually your car, the exhaust pipe's a little bit long. I said, not a problem, can I get out of my seat? We've got a hacksaw, we'll cut it off a bit and you'll be able to close the door. So they said, oh, a bit unusual, but okay, we'll let you do that. So we got down there, sawed off the exhaust pipe, they could close the door, and we flew the planes to Australia.
This is an interesting car, the BMW Double O that you bought from Ross Jensen. Purchase price $4,200.
A bargain, wasn't it?
A brand new car,
brand new.
A BMW at that.
Yes.
And you took it to rallying.
Yes, I did, but of course no one had heard of BMW in New Zealand at that stage. Ross had only just started the franchise, and it's like any other new brand that came in. But I thought it was a pretty good car, and we actually started with it on the track. And Ross, bless his heart, he was a great man to me, but he didn't like my style of driving on Bay Park because, of course, the BMW, and it's not highly modified like they are today. The only way you could get around Bay Park quickly was flick it in the corner, get the tail out, put your foot in, and Ross was telling me, Paul, you're wasting your time. That's not how you drive on a track. This is not how a car goes around the corner. So I said, well, Ross, you take it out and you show me how you should do it. Well, of course, he wouldn't flick it into the corner, so he was getting massive understeer. Yep. And when he was 2 seconds lap behind me, he says, you just carry on with what you're doing. I don't understand it, but it works. Good car.
Staying with BMW in 1971, you had an up-spec BMW.
Yes.
Particular rally, spectacular stage finish.
In those days, and it was a 1970 Silver Fern, the start orders weren't seeded like we have today. So you had slower cars could be starting in front of you. We didn't really know and we didn't really care. We were going for a rally. So unfortunately, I think Andrew Cowan was leading the event. We weren't too far behind him in second place, but we caught a slower car on a stage. And for whatever reason, I don't even know who it was, he decided he wasn't going to pull over. So I was getting closer and more frustrated until the end I had to assist him on one of the tight corners by just resting on his back bumper to give him a little shove so I could go through on the inside. And then it was raining and it's night time, but I discovered that not only had I lost all 4 of my spotlights, I'd lost my left-hand headlight and I only had one right-hand headlight. And we came through and Don says, there's the 200-metre board, and we're sliding through at about 90 miles an hour. And what I couldn't see, because I had no lights, was there'd been a slip on the road. And the back of the car hit the slip, flicked the nose round, we went end for end, and we went through the finish line, end for end on the roof. And I'm sitting there disgusted. Don's sitting there upside down, flicks open the gearbox, gets out the minties and says, it's moments like these we need minties.
Car badly damaged?
No, the car wasn't badly damaged, but my pride was extremely badly damaged. We weren't used to crashing, and it was a good car, and it was a brand new that Ross had given us. Today, you would have kicked out the front of the roof, put a screen in it, and carried on. But we took it home.
Any particular car that stands out that's very special, apart from the one that's at home?
John Wolfe and I, when we were running the Nilex team, we realised that we needed greater support if we're going to continue. So we had put a proposal to General Motors to bring in 2 Chevettes for us. And we got very close to pulling it off. And for whatever reason, they turned it down. And then in the end, they bought out Pentia Ricola in that Vauxhall Chevette to do the International Rally. And personally, I was very disappointed when they decided to keep the car here and put Steve Millen in it.
Yes.
And I thought, well, we've done all the work. But Steve's a great guy. But of course, Steve had that horrendous accident at Pukekohe, and they wanted to do another event. And so they said to me, look, will you drive it? This will be a one-event drive. I said, yeah, look, okay, I'm happy to do that. So they had a great crew down there, Peter Parnell, and one mechanic was called Grant. He was a great mechanic. He said to me, how do you want the car set up? And I said, well, if you take it right back to how Pentia Ricola had it for a starting point, that's where I'd like to start. And he said, well, Steve said it's dangerous like that. I said, well, Steve's a different driving style to me. I says, my driving style is more like Pentia Ricola. If you want a starting point, go back to there. So we went out there, and it was funny because they had a test road, someone's farm down there, and they had the times and everything. And they said, look, you drive up the end of the road with Jim and come back down slowly because the car's dangerous. We'll put the suspension back to how it should be, and then you can have another go. So Scotty and I going up the road in the Chevette, and I said, man, this thing feels good to me, Jim. It just feels good to me, boy, yeah. I said, right, I turn around. So we get on the radio, get the stopwatch out, we're coming down flat out. No. I said, won't crash, be okay. Well, it came down faster than it had ever been down there before, and we went off and won the next event in it, and I was fortunate to keep the drive, and that was a fantastic car. One of the highlights was when Jim Donald and I were only 1 second apart on every stage. Masport would take a second off me, GM would take a second off him on the next stage.
Yep.
And we came into the last stage, and Jim, I think, thought he had me because that Chevette didn't like water, but we fixed that because my father-in-law took me out and we tested and we tested and we tested, and it liked the water in the end, but they didn't know that. And it had a Ford at the end of it. And Jim went into the Ford so quick that he had the problem, and I went through the Ford properly, and we won. The car that was probably closest to my heart is the car brand new Escort that my two dedicated mechanics, Mark Salmon and Earl McFarlane, built for me after we won the New Zealand Championship in the 1979 Ford Escort. That was the stage that we were sponsored by Nilex, New Zealand Limited, and they had sponsored both John Wolfe, my brother-in-law, and I for a number of years. And a new GM came in, or not GM, I forget what his marketing manager, Robert Hutton, still a good friend of mine, but he pulled the pin on our sponsorship, young Robert did, and if he's watching this, I'm telling him off.
Still happens today.
Still happens today. And so it ended up that I had this very good Escort, but I didn't have the money to run it. And I just said to my wife, I said, look, I'm not going to run a good car on the funds that we have available. It just won't work. We did the first round of the New Zealand Championship in the car and won it. And then I decided to sell the car before the International, and I've probably always been fortunate in forward thinking, and I thought there's got to be another angle, there's got to be a better way of doing this. And that's where I approached Toyota New Zealand Limited and suggested to them that we build a Toyota Starlet to do the International. Now that was a very special car. We built it in 15 days from scratch. My good friend Reg Cook built me a fantastic engine for it, and no one knew exactly what it was going to do. And in the International in that year, by the end of stage 3, I think we were 3rd overall in the Starlet, ahead of most of the BDA Escorts. It was phenomenal going downhill. It exceeded all expectations. And for Toyota's perspective, and Toyota were a fantastic sponsor to me. I can understand why their product is so good, because they're a great company. And on the headlines in the paper was the giant killer. So it got fantastic publicity. Now, we didn't finish that rally because it broke the 4-link bars at the back, because we didn't know where the weak points were, but we found out it flat out down the straight when it started to steer from the back wheels instead of the front. But that car went on to be very, very successful. And that was one of my special cars, as well as the Escort. The Owens brothers bought my Escort, and they were great lads. They decided that I would have to take the Owen co-driver so that he could see how we drove. And I remember the first 4 stages on that rally, I think, were tarmac, and he told me, oh, you're about the same on the tarmac. And I thought, oh, that's good, he'll be fine. And then we went on the gravel, and he says, we've got to come to another level. But they kindly lent it to me, and I only learnt this through the history. They actually did let me use their car for the other 3 rounds of the championship, and I think we won one of them, second in the other, and we ended up second in the championship to Jim Donald.
I've been racing for over 30 years, and without the help of the motorsport volunteers, we just couldn't do what we do. So check out the action and fun you can have behind the scenes and get involved.
Are you looking for that special property where you can house your cars in decent shedding, or maybe have that man cave? If you're looking for an apartment here at Hampton Downs, or to sell one, give me a call at Ray White Tuakal. My name and number's here on the door of the car.
Sandbrook Windscreens, New Zealand's leading supplier of boat windscreens, heated classic race and rally car windscreens. Your one-stop shop for all custom-made glass and polyglass windscreens, rear screens and side windows. Sandbrook Windscreens, a clear shot above the rest. Takapuna Panel Beaters, family owned and operated for over 50 years, licensed for all insurance work. Marty, Michelle and the team can handle anything from small dings to large repairs and specialise in structural damage. Takapuna Panel Beaters, Hillside Road, Glenfield.
Special cars, special people.
When I was running a Fiat 124 in the GTX series on the circuit, I met with my wife, who was Alan Wolfe, who is a legend in his own right.
Correct.
Alan's 90 now. He's unbelievable.
He is.
And both my wife and my father-in-law are two of the best gifts that I've ever been given.
Drivers, other crew members, other co-drivers that you would have met, along the way through good times and bad?
Yeah, the co-driver, especially today, but even in those days, they are a vital part. Once pace notes started to come into New Zealand, and in the early days, Possum, Bourne and I, we had to devise a system of our own to write the notes. They're actually not a lot different to what we had done in those days. Yep. But then, of course, I've had Jim Scott, who was world famous in his own right, a tremendous co-driver. But he used to always get car sick on the first day of making the notes. He doesn't know why, and we'd be stopping and Jim would vomit, but on the event he was fine. And I've had Mike Franchi, I've had Don Fennec, they've all been great.
Events, some great, some good, some not so good.
Yeah.
Anything that stands out in those three categories that you can share with us?
Well, there's some not so good, because you've got to look after your wife. You'd agree with that, don't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And she's been very good to me. So she decided, I decided she'd co-drive for me. So there's one road world famous down south called the Motu.
Yes.
And Don Fennec and I, unfortunately, in the BMW, had come round a rainy day, and we came in on the left-hand corner, and we got stuck there, but just because it was so muddy. So I'm trying to get out, and I said to Don, get out and push and we'll get it out of here. And then the bank collapsed and we rolled down the bank, you see. So that was the BMW. So now I'm at the start line with my wife and the Escort, and they're giving her a hard time. You're going through Motu with that guy? He's never got from one end to the other. Do you realise that? And she says, yeah, they tell me that. Well, off we go, one of my favourite roads, and I caught a guy in a Mazda called Quinton Phillips. He was a good mate of mine, but he wasn't pulling over. The road was too narrow, and I'm trying to get past, and I pull out, and I can see the road straight ahead of me, and so I thought, right, where are you? And I was shooting past him, and I gave him a wave to thank for pulling over a little bit, and he turned left, and we went straight over the bank. And he said to me afterwards, man, he said, I saw you waving. I didn't know you were saying thank you or bye-bye. Well, we went down the bank and landed in a tree. So it was pitch dark, all the lights on, killed the cutout switch, got the torch out, and I said to Sue, stay where you are, don't undo your seatbelts. I'm going to hop out and just see if it's okay. So as I stepped off the car onto the bank, I felt the car moved, and I yelled at her, don't undo your belts, you could be going further. Well, wasn't good for the relationship.
No, it was a true test.
It was a true test, but she stuck with me.
So the Motu was pretty special, isn't it? We hear a lot about it, particularly Rally New Zealand, and the internationals just couldn't wait to get here to do it.
They couldn't.
What makes the Motu so special?
It is very challenging. It's very tight corners. In some places it has big drops, but it is a driver's course. Like there's nothing like it. You
get in the groove.
Get in the groove, and away you go.
Circuit racing, rallying, you were very, very successful in all of them. Listening to your rally program and the fun that you've had and the seriousness side of it as well, was circuit racing a little bit of a walk in the park for you?
No, I don't think anything is a walk in the park, because circuit racing is definitely a lot more technical, and it has its own challenges, but it's consistent. The track doesn't alter. In other words, if we're braking at 150 metres, every time we want to brake at 150 metres and we're right, we go through the corner. So that's a skill set. And what you tend to find is that when the good race drivers entered rallying, the majority of them normally crashed early on in their switch to the career. Because your braking distances can change, your surfaces can change, and the majority of them ended off going straight off at the end of a straight, not on a corner. Yeah, that happened consistently. Even their old Greg Murphy, he flew off, I think, in his early days.
Yes, he did.
Somewhere like that.
Manfield.
So I found that I enjoyed the challenge of rallying. I think they've both got different challenges, but I found rallying far more challenging than circuit racing, and that's where probably rallying was where I was comfortable.
Any regrets? If you could change something now, back then, or any regrets? Long career, successful career, hard work, a lot of hard work.
Yeah, and it costs a lot of money,
Yes.
and I think at this stage of life, I sometimes think, why did I spend so much money? But I have no regrets. I found it a fantastic sport. I've loved the people in it. You meet a lot of good friends, like Reg Cook and I. Reg has been a great mate to me, and Reg was right at the beginning, same as me, we realised sponsorship was the key.
Yep.
And see, we set up this banter between us, whereas people thought we were enemies. But of course, it got us the publicity. I remember at the Ashley Forest Rally Sprint, he would stick a sign that said, "Take that, Paul."
Yeah.
You know, but of course, the cameras would come in, and they all helped us on that. And he's been a great competitor and still is. Look what he's doing today. You know, he's a very clever man. Very clever. I laughed at him. I met him in a car with a mate of mine out at Manriura. He hadn't done any motorsport. He was sitting in the back seat and he could always talk. And he was telling me that he is either going to go into motor racing or he's going to be a rugby player. He hadn't worked out which he wanted to do yet. He said, but when I do, I'll be the best. And I thought, really? And he did. And he did. He was focused.
What would you be doing if you weren't doing that? What would you have done?
That's a very.
I've always been interested in this.
Yeah, well, that's a very good question, and I've often thought about it. Yeah, one day can change your life.
Yes.
And that phone call from my cousin to task me to go to that hill climb in that Morris 1100, I never knew at that day that that was going to change my entire future. Because what would I have done if I'd never been introduced to motorsport?
Yes.
I can't answer that question, because when I sat in that car, even though it was a Morris 1100, I just knew that driving fast on metal was me.
That's what you wanted to do.
That's what I wanted to do.
Otherwise you would have been a retired builder and joiner by now.
Could have chopped my fingers off.
Well, that you could have done.
Yes.
But you wouldn't have had, well, maybe you would have had the fun. But it's been a fantastic career.
Thank you.
As I said, you've done yourself, your family, you've done it all proud. Paul, you're a man that dreamed your dreams and you turned them into reality. Thank you so much for being on the Show of Legends, a title that you truly deserve. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Brian.
Cheers.
I've been racing for over 30 years, and without the help of the motorsport volunteers, we just couldn't do what we do. So check out the action and fun you can have behind the scenes and get involved.
Are you looking for that special property where you can house your cars in decent shedding, or maybe have that man cave? If you're looking for an apartment here at Hampton Downs or to sell one, give me a call at Ray White Tuakau. My name and number's here on the door of the car.
Takapuna Panel Beaters, family owned and operated for over 50 years, licensed for all insurance work. Marty, Michelle and the team can handle anything from small dings to large repairs and specialise in structural damage. Takapuna Panel Beaters, Hillside Road, Glenfield. Sandbrook Windscreens, New Zealand's leading supplier of boat windscreens, heated classic race and rally car windscreens. Your one-stop shop for all custom-made glass and polyglass windscreens, rear screens and side windows. Sandbrook Windscreens, a clear shot above the rest.
JB780, a works-built Mk1 Escort RS1800 rally car. The weapon of choice for rally drivers worldwide in the 70s and even into the 80s. This was what you needed to win World Championship rallies. Many of you out there will still remember the sound of a 2-litre BDA on full noise. Appearing through the trees in a forest at night, it was that sight and that sound that created a legion of rally fans. What makes this car special? Well, to start with, it's a factory car. It was built at Boreham, Ford's legendary competitions department. That alone makes it special. But there's another reason why this car is special. Let me tell you the story about grandfather's axe. Original part number, original blade, but it's had many, many handles. And that's the same for most of the rally cars that are around these days. They've got the original part number from when they came out of the factory, but they haven't got the original body. And that's what makes this car special. It's never been rolled, bowled, or arseholed. It's exactly as it came out of the factory in 1978. This car was built and driven by some of the greatest drivers of that time. Mikkola, Vatanen, Bjorn Waldegaard have all at some stage driven a World Championship rally in this car. The car was purchased and was to be run by Doug Benefield's legendary Masport Escort rally team. The aim was to win the 1979 New Zealand round of the World Rally Championship. The driver, Mikkola. Mikkola, as expected, did the business and won the 79 International Rally. The car was then sold to John Louis Leroux from New Caledonia, who returned it to New Zealand for the 1982 International Rally and also used it in Australia's Southern Cross Rally. The car was then bought by Chris Porter, also a member of the Masport Escort team back in the day, and Chris faithfully restored the car to exactly as it was in 1979. It's a painstaking restoration. Everything on this car is exactly the same as it was in the 1979 International Rally, except for one thing. After the rally, Mikkola and Arnie Hertz took their seats with them. So it hasn't got the same seats, but otherwise it's exactly the same. JB780, an RS1800 factory-built rally car. Original in every way, completely unspoilt, exactly as it came out of the factory in 1979, a true rallying legend.
Hello everybody, I'm John Tomlin and welcome to the Historic News Spot, brought to you by Sandbrooks Windscreens for classic cars with heated and plastic windscreens for race and rally cars. Today we're going to talk about the brand new Formula Open New Zealand series for historic wings and slick single-seaters. Featuring cars from the 1980s up to 2015 and run over 4 rounds in January and February. This series caters for a specific range of single-seaters that either raced in New Zealand in the past or are plentiful here now. At this point, I would like to introduce one of the competitors in Class A, Gary Rush. Welcome to the show, Gary.
Hi, John.
You're running a Swift DB4. You've been running it in Formula Libre. Now I believe you're going to be you're the first one to put your name down for the new Formula Open series. Wellington Company has just gone and bought the remaining FT40 Tartus TRS cars, and they'll be actually going to be leased out for the Formula Open class. There's 7 of them going to be leased. 2 of them are already spoken for. Now, talking to Kenny Smith, and Kenny's racing with us in the series. He raced against him last season. He tells me that they're going to be about even on lap time, so it's going to be a bit of a battle because you've got 6 Formula Atlantics in there and 7 Tartus TR. One's a ground effects car, which is the Atlantic, and of course the TRS cars, they're a big aero car. So what's the difference going to be?
Essentially with the aero cars, they get some generate ground force from their wings to get extra grip on the wheels, but they don't have the same amount of drag as our cars.
So the Tartus FT40s, they run a 1800cc Toyota engine, which twin cam, which normally aspirated, fuel injected, only putting out around about 220 horsepower. You guys are generating around about 250 out of a 1600.
The Atlantics are a lot highly strung. You've got to rev them and work the gears constantly. Small engine, not a lot of torque. So they're a real screamer. Anything up 9,500 would be conservative for us to keep them at.
Folks, it's certainly going to be worth coming out this year to watch it because that series is going to be fantastic. So unfortunately, we've run out of time. I'm John Tomlin with the Sandbrooks Windscreens News Spot. Thanks for watching, and we look forward to you joining us next episode.